Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of We Got Balls. And Scott, we're in the middle of a conversation. We started it last time, and we want to finish it. And we want to use a phrase that our friend Jay Stringer gave to us. If you've never read the book Unwanted by Jay Stringer, highly recommend it. It's a great read, and he used this phrase, listen to your lust. Listen to your lust. And as a recovering religious person, I'm mildly offended by that. I don't want to be anything to do with my lust. What are you talking about?
You're supposed to extinguish your lust. You're supposed to stamp it out of existence. You should be running from your lust, not listening to it.
I take my AR-15 to the gun range and blow my lust up on the target. Actually, right, a big target that says lust on it. I just blast that to smithereens because I don't want to have anything to do with my lust. My lust is evil from the pit of hell. It's dragged me down to so many shameful places that I just never want to see it again. So to listen to it, if you're listening to this conversation, guys, you really want to perk your ears up and figure out, what do you really want when it comes to sexuality? What are your deep desires that you're longing for? And stick around, and we'll have more on that coming right back.
Welcome to We Got Balls, real, raw, masculine sex talk with Chris Inman and Scott Cohn. Here we go.
Well, fellas, if you were listening to our last episode on licking your lust, which is not about oral sex, but it did talk about desire.
The slurping noises get me every time.
That's wrong on like 15 levels. So
welcome to We Got Balls.
Yeah. So we're going to continue part 2 and really transition from licking your lust, which we find to be very difficult and almost impossible to do, to actually listening to your lust and how that can actually help you find a way to freedom and growth in your life. Now, Chris, how can that is so counterintuitive to everything we heard growing up in church. You're supposed to flee from, sexual immorality. You're supposed to run the other direction. You're supposed to snap a rubber band. You're supposed to get in accountability groups and confess every time you have an errant thought of bikinis and all of that. And so you're telling us, what craziness are you talking about listening to your lust?
Well, I think if you read Unwanted and sit with Jay, and I really, as I read Unwanted, that first chapter on the goodness of God and sexuality was really impactful to me. I think it was an important place to start in this exploration of listening to your lust, because I for the longest time had this black and white, good, bad view of sexuality, which was sexuality outside marriage, bad. Sexuality inside marriage, good. And as you said last time, glorious, and it's just blissful. And it's like, it's almost like in my wife were the 70 virgins of Islam.
There's a rainbow at the end of every orgasm in the marriage bed.
If you've ever watched the movie 40-Year-Old Virgin, like the end scene with Steve Carell dancing around.
Yeah.
This is the age of Aquarius.
Yeah.
That's what I was taught good sexuality was. And I think what listening to my lust has invited me to do is help me realize it's more complex than that. It's more mature than that. There's a part of me, of my desire, of my lust, that has always been good. Always. Even as far back as 13-year-old me finding a porn magazine on the side of the road and keeping a page of that under my bed for a few days, reading the erotic story that was written on it and being aroused by that. There was a goodness in that little boy was not just broken and without hope. He wanted something that he couldn't find elsewhere. And so this listening to my lust for me has opened a door of, like we talk about so often in our conversations, of curiosity and kindness. Well, in my lust, there's something to be curious about, or really many things, but there's a lot of kindness to be shown to myself and to my journey to see what is it that I really want that I don't have in my life right now. And I'm just looking for places to find it.
Yeah. So let me ask you a question.
Okay.
When you have had sex or wanted to have sex with the person that you're with, what are you really looking for?
Oh man, do we have time for this? Is this like Dr. Ruth or something? Or is this
Yeah,
like we're
yeah.
breaking? It's like because
You can put the penis in the vagina.
yes, dated references, by the way. Don't look that up.
Yeah, you won't know who she is.
What am I really looking for?
Like, give me some categories give me categories of like thinking about desire, sexual desire, lust. Just categorize like what do you want? What are you really wanting out of that? Besides the the obvious thing is I want an orgasm, right? Duh. Okay.
Yeah.
Thanks for that. But you can have an orgasm by yourself, right? You can go give yourself an orgasm if you want to.
I can.
See,
but I think the research shows that masturbatory orgasms, are about 40% as connective in my brain as orgasms with another person.
Yeah.
And so I don't get all the chemicals with masturbation orgasms that I do with intercourse orgasms.
That's true, but it's like having pizza. There are good pizzas and there are great pizzas. So
yeah, it's still pizza, right? So I think the first thing that comes to mind, and I think it goes back to a little bit we talked about last time, is I'm just horny. And that's a feeling that a lot of guys say that they have. I just want sex.
And what does horny mean?
Yeah, because in my body, I've learned that orgasm numbs out a lot of the negative emotion that I carry in my day to day. So it gives me a vacation for 15 minutes.
Okay, so what you're saying there is that you've learned through your experience that when you want to have sex with who you want to have sex with, it's leading to a sense of temporary escape from something. I
think initially, yes. I think that's
now. Do you think that's a healthy, growth-oriented thing or not? I'm really being curious about this.
No, it's an adapted adapted behavior.
I'm gonna disagree with you. I think escape from the cares of life temporarily through sex can be a healthy thing for a couple.
Yeah, so here's where I'm coming from with that. So let's do a little rewind. I think the question that you were asking, I was thinking of it, okay, when I was young, why did I want to have sex with my wife?
Oh.
And that's where I went, just to give some clarity around there. I think a lot of that was modeled by the fact that I had taught myself in my body to escape through masturbation for many years before that. And so when I didn't have a grid for what healthy connection and healthy desire was, because I didn't have any experience with that. I was in a survival strategy for all of my childhood and in my young adulthood. So yes.
Let me just put a pin on that here. I want to go back and just reemphasize it because it's a very important point. What you are saying is masturbation and orgasm was adapted by you as a way to survive an environment in which nobody was caring for your emotional life.
100%. And that translated over into, and I've said this to my wife, so it's not a big deal. She was a fleshlight a lot of times. She was a masturbatory instrument. Now, was she beautiful and did I love her and did I want to build a life with her? Yes, there was a lot more desire in that, but in my experience to that point, I didn't have the emotional, relational depth to see her in the way that a healthy desire was meant to see her with.
So let me get a little granular with this. What you're saying is that as a child, you learned that whenever you were lonely, whenever you were bored, whenever you were really stressed, whenever you were tired, whenever you were angry, whenever you were fearful and anxious, or whenever you felt a lot of shame, you could go give yourself an orgasm. And later, after you got married, you could use your wife to get that in a way to regulate your emotions. Is that what you're saying?
Yes. I didn't discover it till I was 17, but yes, at 17 and on, that's how I regulated my emotional stuff. Was with orgasms.
So you didn't feel a lot of those bigger feelings. You immediately bypass them by going to something that felt really good and intense really quickly in your body. And that's how you learn to survive the lack of connection and care in kind of a disengaged or rigid family system.
Yes, which is why controlling my lust made sense, because the depth of my understanding of desire itself, of lust itself, was so shallow. It was either do the right thing and shut it all down, or do the wrong thing and indulge it and feel ashamed and guilty. And so that's the bandwidth that I had to live in for probably the first, I'd say, 15 years of my mature adult life.
Yeah. And I'm with you. I had the same thing. So from a young age, I'm introduced to sexuality. I learned that sexual touch feels good. I orgasm when I'm a teenager. I learned that feels really great. Keep doing more of that. And it was a great way to avoid the pain, the heartache, the emotional dysregulation in my life, because orgasm was always there and it always felt great and it always temporarily worked. It left me feeling emptier. It left me feeling more shame, but it worked temporarily, and it worked for a lot of my adult life. And there were times probably where I used my wife as a fleshlight, like you say. I think most guys have made that same kind of mistake. But
and I'd say this: women or partners feel that,
yeah,
when they're being consumed and objectified as a masturbatory tool.
So, so that's kind of the foundation with which we're kind of approaching this idea of actually listening to our lust, which is why I asked the question: when you have sex, what are you really looking for? Underneath the sexual pleasure and the orgasm, what is the deep longing of your heart?
Ooh, I want to be seen.
Hmm.
I want someone to pursue me and desire me and be vulnerable with me. My first arousal template is, a young woman who wants to be naked and vulnerable and excited and playful with me.
Yeah. And mine was built around masturbating with other friends, and that's naked and exciting and playful.
Yep.
So, right, we get shaped by those early experiences. What we just gave an example of is decoding what it looks like to listen to your lust. Like, what is it that has turned me on, and what was I really looking for in that? And I think what you just said, all of those elements, being seen, feeling a sense of belonging, connection, being pursued, mutual pleasure. I don't want to just get off. I want my partner to get off. I want us to have a shared experience. And I do think also put in there is a sense of transcendence. For a moment, time stops. I'm just immersed and lost kind of in the joy and the pleasure. And there's this dissolving of boundaries between me and the person I'm having sex with, and all the cares of life go away, and I'm feeling kind of at one with pleasure and the other person and God even. And there's this transcendent a sense of rest even.
Yes. And I think I got a measure of that when I was masturbating to orgasm. And so that was enough for me in that season. And I think to find what you're talking about required me to let go of the artificial means of finding that release, that substitute. It's almost like, I think it's a great analogy, fast food versus fine dining. It is that I was on a diet of fast food. And if you've ever eaten fast food, in fact, sad to say, the guy who did Supersize Me, the eat fast food only for
Morgan Spurlock,
30 days. Yeah, he passed away recently. So sad. But he discovered, the negative impacts of eating just that very substitute imitation diet versus what you're talking about, which is like a meal that really lasts and really has, it's not only physically satisfying, it's emotionally satisfying. It's fulfilling. It brings a process that brings me to a fullness of, and here's that word again, connection. So we're talking about listening to my lust. What I struggled to go back to is, how was I trying to connect in ways that didn't fulfill me?
Yeah. And so much of how guys discover their sexuality through masturbation as little boys is not really helping them feel more connected, because at the end of the orgasm, there's nobody there with you. So what you've just done is, it's very common to feel alone, to feel bored, I'm lacking excitement. I'm just by myself. And so I'm going to go play with myself. I'm going to go masturbate. I'm going to bring play into my life by playing with myself. And that works temporarily. But when I orgasm, who am I bonding with? There's nobody else there to really kind of connect with. And so
my shame.
it intensifies my shame and my loneliness. Right.
Yeah.
And so that's such a common pattern that we all develop early in our lives. Why are we developing that? Because there's not really anybody caring for us in our home, our family system. We're not getting that care. We're not getting that play. We're not getting that sense of connection in our families. And so we go manufacture it ourselves. This is our best attempt. And you cannot vilify a little boy for going and self-soothing that way. You can't. Because all you're doing is compounding the problem by shaming him and telling him he should just get his shit together and stop jacking off, and what's your problem, blah, blah, blah. You're going to creep. Like, he's doing the best he can to navigate the environment in which he doesn't feel seen and cared for and played with. And so one of the first things you have to do is you have to say, could you just honor the way that helped you survive feeling alone, feeling disconnected?
And that feels like such a kindness, Scott, that's so devoid in this space of trying to change a behavior.
Yeah.
It's like when I'm just focused on stopping a behavior, I can't get to that kindness.
No.
I can't honor the little boy who's learning to survive. And yeah, he may biologically be 60, but emotionally he's still 12.
That's right.
And he's still struggling with this survival strategy, this coping behavior of porn and masturbation or massage parlors or whatever you developed into. And to stop and say, there is a goodness in that desire to connect that has just been hijacked by a behavior that doesn't ultimately fulfill someone. And it takes time to sit in that kindness, because it's kind of unbelievable.
It is unbelievable because you didn't get it growing up. It's not what you've experienced probably in your church environment at all. It's not something that the culture really cares to give you, because they don't care what you do. In fact, they would prefer that you just jack off to porn all the time and have sex with as many people as you can, because that's the standard of fulfillment in the cultural view, is just do whatever you want, whenever you want. So they're not all that interested in developing maturity in you either. They want to treat you like a child the rest of your life. So in this environment where you've got all this command and control demands on one side from a cultural element, and then just the complete chaos on the other side, what are you supposed to do? The way to really change is to be with other people who can offer you that kind of kindness and say, can we just pause for a second and just honor the way that you found to seek out connection, even if it's artificial, even if it's just temporary, even if it causes you a lot of problems right now. That's a completely normal way to live your life in the completely abnormal family you grew up in, where nobody's paying attention to you when you come home from school. Nobody's going, hey, buddy, it looks like you're kind of sad. Did you lose your best friend today? Nobody's paying attention. So of course you're going to pay attention to yourself. Of course you're going to play with yourself if nobody's playing with you. Can you honor that? And that is radical. That is radical kindness.
Do you feel like listening to your lust is almost the same way of saying seeing the real me?
Yeah.
And I think that lust word, as we talked about in the last episode, is so loaded with shame and fixedness. It's hard to get past the concept that there's a part of me that just wants to be seen, just wants to be acknowledged, pursued, cared for, played with, and touched literally in a way that is healing. It's wholesome.
And can I just tell you that the real shame in all of that is that we desire that in the first place? That's where we feel the most shame, that I have desires in the first place, because it makes me weak and it makes me uncontrollable and it makes me feel like, well, my desires weren't met growing up a lot of the times. So why would anybody care to meet them now? And, I work with a lot of guys that struggle with attraction to other dudes, same-sex attraction. And there is a lot of shame around a man being attracted to the idea of being sexual with another man or even engaging in that. And my invitation to them is always, well, how is that helping you? Oh, it wasn't helping me. It's perverted. It's homosexual. God's going to send me to hell. I'm like, whoa. Let's just stop for a second. I'm not saying that I want you to go do that, but my invitation is, it was doing something for you good, or you wouldn't have done it if it was all bad. So what were you looking for? And so much of it just comes down to, I just want to belong. I just want to be seen. I want to be pursued. It's the things you talked about, right? All those are good. They're not going anywhere. You're still going to have those desires. So the question then becomes, where did I first learn that the only way I could get this was by being sexual with another man? When did that start in my life? Or when did I first feel like the only way I could get that is if I went to a strip club and got a blowjob? Or when did I blah, 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 blah?
So how do I get over that hump, Scott? Because I think it's the intellectual engagement of where did I first learn is one thing. And maybe I can go there, write a story, sit in a group and talk about it. But I think that there's a barrier in whether it's in my family of origin or my religious dynamic or just in my shame itself, that I can't let go of the control that I've been taught I have to have over this thing to make it stop, to really be curious. Because kindness, I do believe, comes first. I've got to feel kindness from others. I've got to connect with kindness in my body to allow myself to begin to believe it's possible. But then there's curiosity. Then there's the act of becoming curious around where did I first, or in fact, if you want to trace some scripture back, who told you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Who told you?
Who told you you're naked? Who told you there's something wrong with you?
Yes. And that for me was a really tough thing to, like, I had the idea in my head for years before I actually began to do the work of curiosity around where did I first.
First and fundamentally, didn't it take somebody who you felt safe with that could invite you into that?
Yeah, but even after I had that experience, I don't think I truly believed that was what was going to be what I needed. Like, they would ask me questions about the origins of my desire, and I would answer them, but I would stay very much in my left brain. I'd stay very much in my head about it, and wouldn't let go and be truly vulnerable and truly emotional around it.
Okay, so the important thing to note there, though, is what you just told me is you didn't feel emotionally safe with the people that were doing that. In some way,
I didn't know what that was.
So you needed somebody who could, first of all, help you get in touch with what you were feeling in your body, because everything starts with that. Everything.
Yeah.
And what that requires is somebody who you feel, when I use the term safe, did you feel safe? I'm talking about emotional safety. Did you feel safe enough that you could tell them anything? That you could tell them what you were feeling? That you could tell them what you longed for?
Theoretically, yes. Practically, it was hard to believe.
Yeah, right.
So the words were used. You can tell us anything. You're accepted. If these things are confidential, we're with you. But I think we've just got to acknowledge that in listening to your lust, it's a growth process even to listen, because I'm not going to show up in a space. I find this really common. A guy will show up and he'll vomit. I don't know if that's as much shame as it is vulnerability, or as it is this mishmash of both. I've been holding this in for so long, blah, and I throw it all up. And then as soon as they do it, you see in their face, oh shit, I shouldn't have said all that.
Yeah.
What did I do?
Yeah. There's I think it is shame vomiting, shame and vulnerability vomiting. And then there is the vulnerability hangover, inevitably.
Yeah. And so I shouldn't have shared that. And so then you go back to this control, self-protection, but to willingly say, And I think this is the key step in listening to your lust is when you ask the question, where did you first, to start saying, I don't know. Because then in my body, I feel like I can open that door and look and let the truth come to me over time. Immediately, I don't know at first. I don't have an answer to your question, but that's okay.
So you're saying humility, a degree of humility in admitting, I don't know. I haven't figured it out.
Yeah.
And a willingness to take risks with the help of others are
Yes.
kind of the core ingredients in starting this journey, is what you're saying.
I think once you get to that point, you can really begin to listen. And up to that point, it's about self-justification. Yeah, I'll give you an answer to the question.
Or self-flagellation. It's one of the two.
Well, I think it's in a place of shame, in a place of disconnection in my body. I don't think I know the difference. So I think once I begin to truly, and it took, like, chronologically for me, it took 8 years to be open to listening to my lust. It was from the time I first began to engage a safe space. And I think I was slow in that I was kind of riding the roller coaster of addiction, going up and down, and I would engage on some level and disengage. And so I was very passive, and recovery people call that passive recovery and active recovery. I think for much of that 8 years, I was kind of in a passive recovery state, probably the first 6. I was around recovery, but I really wasn't doing anything with it. And I believed in it. I thought it was great, but I was still stuck in my head, not in my body, stuck in my head. And so then I began to say, well, this isn't working, because not only have it's not gotten better, it's gotten worse. I've crossed some boundaries that I swore I'd never cross and created far more chaos. And here I am. Okay, there's got to be something more. And that's when we met and began to engage with Jay and began to truly do the work of listening to our lust through story. That's probably the first time that I would say I engaged the I don't know humility place of this journey.
And it was the same for me. I think you just described me and everything you just said there. That was my trajectory. Like, I got into recovery in 2014 because I had been doing some sketchy stuff and I wanted to stop. And so my initial entry point was from a place of shame and behavior management. I just wanted to stop the behavior. And so I gravitated to those methodologies that help me shut down desire or contain it to a place of less damage. But I wasn't doing anything to really get at the core thing that was driving it. And so I actually did get worse after a while too. The containment methodology worked for a while, and then the radiation started leaking out again. And then it just became, we had a disaster. And I've been open about this. So I started engaging in sexting, something I'd never done before. But in order to understand where that was coming from, and I had a confrontation with my wife, and she goes, "Why are you doing this?" And I'm like, "I don't know." That was my answer. She's like, "Well, you better find out." And that's what really started me. Fortunately, I was training with Jay and you at the time, and that's what really started me getting curious. And by the way, there was a story about that early in my life. So that ability to come to kind of an end of yourself and an end of all the self-management techniques, and just realize this is not working. It's not creating real change in my life. It's making me more miserable. I'm back to hiding. I'm back to lying. I'm back to feeling like I'm about to create a disaster at any moment. What do I do? And it was out of that desperation of really discovering this idea that Jay pioneered, or, really documented well with the research too, which was kind of compelling to my cognitive mind, that there's a real reason why you're doing the things you're doing. You may not understand what it is. And Jay's the one that kind of drew those lines between people's sexual struggles and what was going on in their past. And that was a really transformative time for me, like to set me on a new trajectory where I began to be curious. But it's only been, I've only been doing that since 2020. So 4 years coming on this fall.
Well, and I think that's important to recognize this is a journey, and I don't think we'll ever stop listening to our desire. So let's put a new spin on that. I think let's take the explosives out of that word lust and put it in the context that it really is. It's just desire. it's really strong desire. But what do I really want? Adam Young said that beneath the question, what am I feeling, is the question.
What's the deep longing of your heart beneath that desire?
Yes. What is the deep longing of your heart beneath desire? And so for us, I think it will be important to continue the journey, wherever that takes you. I believe if you take the journey, if you start walking the path, you'll find exactly what you need. When you'll find it, don't know. How you'll find it, don't know.
I think engaging your story it's the work that God has called you into to co-create with him, to bring beauty and goodness to the world. It doesn't stop in this life, does it?
It is. But engaging your story looks differently for every person.
Yeah.
And so as long as you pursue that, and there's ways to do it that are more expedient than others. If you just passively do it, you'll find it over the course of years. If you actively engage it through intensive work retreats, groups, you'll get there a lot faster. But this listening is the work of humanity. We all have desires. It's what makes us human. And as we learn to listen, then we learn to know me and each other and God on some level. So really, this is deep spiritual work. You ever thought that, looking at porn was deep spiritual work, Scott?
But it is.
Yes, it is.
Because it reveals something about my heart. It reveals something about what I long for, and it reveals something about my disappointments.
Yes, it does. So guys, we'll continue to engage. You can connect with us multiple ways. We're going to be live on YouTube Fridays from this point on, 11 o'clock a.m. Central, 12 Eastern, 9 a.m. Pacific. Hop on, chat with us, engage, throw questions at us. You can send questions to us at wegotballs00@gmail.com. Scott, we got a retreat coming up too. We're going to be in Blue Ridge for the Blue Ridge Story Retreat come the end of July.
Yeah.
There's going to be more opportunities to connect and be in person and do some of this story work, listening to your lust with a bunch of other guys who are looking to grow as well. So pay attention to that. Check out successfulmen.com, and we'll have more information up there and let you know how we can connect further. So
thanks for joining us here on We Got Balls.
What? We got balls?
We got balls.
We got balls.
We got balls.
We'll see you soon, guys.
Bye-bye, guys.
Don't forget to subscribe for more episodes. You can connect with Chris and with Scott at successfulmen.com.